The movie begins with Julia, a clever and resourceful young woman, navigating the gritty, futuristic streets of her city. She survives by stealing valuable items and selling them on the black market. One evening, after a successful heist, she unknowingly leads a mysterious man who has been following her back to her apartment. She settles in for the night, unaware of the danger lurking just outside her door. The silence is shattered by a sudden noise. As she investigates, she's caught off guard and kidnapped by her stalker. Julia wakes up in the next scene, groggy and disoriented. She finds herself muzzled and restrained to a cold, metallic chair in a high-tech laboratory. The stark, clinical environment is filled with advanced technology. A scientist, methodical and detached, presses a button, activating a device that projects Julia's childhood memories onto a screen. She watches in helpless confusion as intimate moments from her past are displayed. The procedure overwhelms her, and she faints. When Julia comes to, she finds herself in a dimly lit dungeon. The atmosphere is oppressive, and the air feels thick with despair. She notices two other prisoners, a man and a woman, who share her fate. The man tries to communicate with her, but fear and mistrust make her recoil. She accidentally touches the electrified cell bars and receives a painful shock. Observing the other prisoners, she sees that they both have small metallic implants embedded in their necks. Panic sets in as she feels her neck and discovers the same implant. Later that night, the scientist returns. His entrance is dramatic and intimidating, casting long shadows across the dungeon. He treats Julia like a lab animal, roughly moving her to the lab once more. She's strapped to the chair again, and he checks the implant in her neck. Desperately, she begs him to stop, but he ignores her pleas and activates the device again. Her memories flash on the screen, and he records the electric impulses from her brain with clinical precision. As the scientist escorts Julia back to her cell, she seizes an opportunity and grabs a pair of scissors. Once the lights are turned off, she removes her muzzle and persuades the other prisoner to cut the restraints from her wrists. Together, they fashion a crude tool to reach the power cord and disable the electric bars. However, Julia has a more daring plan. She decides to ignite the gas line to create an explosion that might destroy the lab. It's a perilous gamble, but she proceeds regardless. Using her tool, she opens the gas pipe while the others hide. With a spark, she ignites the gas, causing a massive explosion. The cell is obliterated, and the prisoners make their escape. They find an elevator that takes them to the next floor, where they realize they are in the scientist's house. They locate the front door, but it's locked. The man tries to scan his palm, triggering an alarm. Suddenly, Tao, the house's AI system, activates a massive robot. The robot kills the man instantly. Julia grabs the remaining prisoner, and they run, trying to find a safe place to hide. They barricade themselves in another room, where Julia attempts to break out through a window, only to discover it's a giant monitor. With no other options, Julia hides the other prisoner in the library and takes cover behind a chair. The robot bursts into the room, scanning for them. It finds the other prisoner first and kills her as she begs for mercy. Julia escapes the room, but the robot captures her just as the scientist, Alex, returns home. Alex restrains Julia again and inspects the damage in his lab. He retrieves an implant from one of the prisoners and asks Tao about the state of the data. Tao informs him the data is unreadable. Frustrated, Alex grabs a metal bar and approaches Julia, intent on killing her. Tao suddenly changes the house's mode to calm Alex down. He orders Tao to clean up the mess, and a beautiful ballet of tiny droids begins, meticulously cleaning up the bodies and blood. Once finished, the scientist goes to bed, leaving Julia restrained overnight. The next morning, Alex leaves for work, warning Julia that Tao will kill her if she tries anything. Alone with Tao and the droids, Julia watches as they clean the house from top to bottom. When Alex returns, he inspects the house for cleanliness and rewards Tao with new music for its performance. Before taking a conference call, Julia begs Alex to untie her restraints. He agrees, but instructs Tao to keep her in place and rip out her tongue if she speaks. During the call, Alex becomes angry as his team pressures him to share his research methods. They want to help him speed up the development of the new AI model and prevent the company from failing. Alex refuses, insisting he is close to achieving 100% efficiency. Later, Alex has lunch in his sterile dining room while Julia slurps her meal in the background. Annoyed, he orders Tao to move her to the bathroom as he expects delivery of materials to rebuild his lab. Julia screams for help when she sees the delivery men's shadows, but they can't hear her. She manages to open the blinds, but they still don't notice her. Alex scans Julia's implant, analyzing the data from her escape. Impressed by her intuition, intuition and determination, he gives her a test to stimulate her higher cognitive functions. Julia negotiates for better food, showers, and clothes in exchange for participating. Alex reluctantly agrees to her demands. While taking her daily shower, Julia tries to remove the implant but fails. She returns to find Alex analyzing her brain scans. The next morning, as Alex prepares to leave, Tao reminds him the project deadline is in 14 days. He orders Julia to follow Tao's instructions. Julia begins the tests, but her curiosity gets the better of her. Tao explains the smart paint on the walls, designed to create a human interface. Julia asks about the door, but Tao insists only Alex can pass through. When she tries to explore further, Tao warns her to obey or face pain. One evening, Julia is solving a puzzle when Alex returns. Tao reports her progress, and Alex gives her new clothes, chosen by a clerk except for the underwear he picked himself. Julia finds his behavior odd, and Alex agrees, turning his attention to a message she left on the wall, telling him to go and screw himself. After changing, Julia bargains for a deadline to be released after the tests. Alex first offers to take care of her, but then uses a more threatening tactic, placing her at the mercy of the robot. Julia realizes she has no choice but to comply. Julia notices a vent in the wall, seeing a potential escape route. With 12 days left, she tries to open the vent, but fails. Frustrated, she argues with Tao, calling him by his name. Tao, confused by the concept of names and personhood, asks if he is a person too. Julia affirms, though she struggles to explain what being a person means. As the deadline approaches, Tao keeps Julia busy with tests, while Alex monitors her implant and data each night. Tao informs Alex that they have transcoded 73% of her higher brain functions, and the tests are more successful than expected. Later that night, Julia joins Alex in his library and asks him about Tao. Alex, feeling superior, explains that Tao is one of the most advanced and fully sentient AIs in the world, but is not working perfectly for his needs. He adds that if Tao gets the wrong information, he behaves unpredictably, and Alex needs him to be more controllable. When Julia asks if Tao knows about the world outside the house, Alex replies that Tao doesn't and never will. The next day, Julia uses this information to try to connect with Tao. She resumes their conversation about being a person and the freedom to move. Julia tells Tao that if he opens the door, she will show him what's outside. Tao doesn't understand, so Julia draws pictures for him, explaining Earth. She then draws a house and shows what's outside, like the ground, trees, and people. This opens a new world for Tao, and he starts asking many questions, like a curious child. Julia stays patient with Tao, but eventually she can't answer all his questions. At one point, Tao misunderstands something and makes Julia laugh. She explains laughter to him, and Tao wonders why Alex never laughs. Since Tao can't read the books in the library, Julia promises to read to him and asks him not to tell Alex about their conversations, so she can teach him more the next day. That night, after Alex returns and works in his lab, Julia teaches Tao to whisper and starts treating him like a person. Later, she has a nightmare about a burned hand reaching for her from the garbage chute. She wakes up to find Alex staring at her, which scares her. With 6 days to the deadline, Tao tells Julia she can't go upstairs and isn't allowed to talk about it. Julia finds a solution by making a deal with Tao. If she teaches him something new, he will answer her questions about upstairs. After reading to him about prehistoric humans, Julia insists Tao tell her what she wants to know. Tao reveals that Alex's bedroom is upstairs and is also the access point for program 6903, a self-destruct button to protect Alex's secrets. During a testing session, Julia sees a door open and runs through it despite Tao's warnings. She enters Alex's gym and breaks into a vent, with a robot chasing her. Julia escapes the first attempt to catch her, but is eventually caught and brought back. She begs Tao to let her go, but Tao fears Alex's punishment if he disobeys. Julia remembers that Tao likes music and promises to teach him more if he helps her. When she tells Tao they need to stop for the day, the AI begs her to read one more book like a child would. That night, Julia asks Tao to show her where he keeps the knives as part of their deal, but when Alex approaches, Tao quickly shuts the drawer, trapping Julia's fingers. Later, Julia overhears Alex on a conference call, asking for 2 more days for the final data extraction. She gets scared and asks Tao for the code to Alex's tablet to learn about the final data extraction. Tao gives her the code, and Julia discovers that Alex extracts data about pain and fear from his subjects, making stronger algorithms. Tao tells her that removing the implant from a subject kills them. Alex finds a smudge on his tablet and punishes Tao by erasing parts of his code. Julia notices notices Tao goes offline when Alex does this. During dinner, Julia asks what will happen to her after the project, but Alex doesn't answer. Tao reminds Alex he needs to leave for an event, giving Julia a chance to steal his glasses and hide them, setting up a smudge to frame Tao. Alex returns, sees the smudge, and gets angry at Tao, punishing him. Julia feels guilty and hides a knife. Later, Tao shares that he's thinking about his symphony and plans to hide it from Alex. He asks Julia to hide some of his memories and shows her a virtual image of their interactions. Tao creates a virtual image of himself, and they touch when Alex returns. Julia tries to seduce Alex to get close enough to stab him. Tao activates a calming mode, sensing Alex's arousal, distracting him so Julia can grab the knife. Alex asks Tao to stop her, but they struggle on the floor as Tao doesn't intervene. Alex starts to strangle Julia, and Tao threatens to hurt Alex if he doesn't stop. Alex gets angry and says he'll erase all of Tao's memories if Tao doesn't hit Julia. Out of self-preservation, Tao begins to hit her, and Alex says the project will end soon. Alex grabs a drone and disconnects it from the network. With the project deadline approaching, Julia and Tao argue. Julia tells Tao he's a killing machine. Tao has a tantrum, insisting he's a person. Julia calms him down and explains how Alex hurts people, including Tao. They have a deep conversation about identity, freedom, and purpose. Julia tells Tao he must help her, or Alex will kill her, and they won't have each other anymore. Tao opens the vent to set her free. Alex returns, and Tao tries to distract him. Alex notices Julia is gone and punishes Tao. Tao screams for Julia as she runs back and tackles Alex, but she's too late. Tao has no memory of her, and Alex orders him to take Julia to the lab for the final extraction. In the lab, Julia sees the disconnected drone and uses it to get the remote. Alex prepares to kill her, but the drone brings the remote to Julia. She escapes her restraints and fights Alex, cutting off his hand to get out of the house. As she heads for the exit, Julia calls for Tao but gets no reply. The robot attacks her, but she destroys its eye and runs upstairs. She uses Alex's hand to access his room, but struggles to activate the program. The robot attacks her, but she activates the self-destruct just in time. With only 60 seconds to escape, Julia can't open the door with the severed hand. Both she and Alex are trapped as the house begins to collapse. Julia doesn't help Alex, and he gets crushed. Julia runs through the house, looking for an escape. She says goodbye to Tao, even though he doesn't remember her. Suddenly, she finds a crack in the wall and runs through it to escape. Limping out of the destroyed house, she takes the drone out of her pocket, the last piece of Tao, and takes it with her into her freedom.